broadcast was spreading station to station, like an infection across the nation. Though you can't stop it when it stops.
Hey, all you sports fans out there in the tubosphere, or to you, the individuals, part of the collective, welcome to post-cathartic release day after national championship game, quickie version talk radio of the OMSR, Fast Track Sports Rack highlights. I am your brief but concise host, Will, the alternative ESPN Sports Thrill. Man, what a fantastic finish. Alright, so talking briefly and concisely about on Monday Morning Quarterbacking segment, taken from Colin Coward, The Herd, all the video highlights courtesy to, and ESPN, everything else over here to the OMSR. Always do a little show to let you know the clip order coming up, the Lies and Wherefores, due to the OMSR sponsor being the DMCA, the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. It covers a fair use standard, minimal use, and derivatives. So all those clips sort of speak for themselves. And I'm not going to do a show from the set and have you watch talk radio when that's what you're going to be doing with him. I will just say, check out some of those two quicker tribute videos, sort of like a highlight reel and or a short, nicely done. The show that I did was not my best material, but did get all those moments from the fourth quarter, but it is 17 minutes long as well. This one is a little bit long as well, but lots of good relevant topics being discussed. And then, yeah, tonight you got Ohio State, Michigan State. First time they've ever met in the top five. Just good. The machine rolls verily onward. Thanks for watching those silly DUIs while you're out there. Roll clips.
Hope you enjoyed the game last night. I did. It is funny sometimes, the complaints people have, and last night in big games like the NBA Finals, World Series, Super Bowl, sometimes I'll just go on Twitter and just kind of see the tempo and kind of what is driving people. I'm amazed how many people I tweeted last night. I said, you know, Tim Tebow's doing a pretty good job. Who cares? He gets free. But if you don't like pregame shows, turn the channel. I've never once watched a Super Bowl pregame show, ever. It's like 7 hours. Never watched it. What time's the game start? See you there. Like when people complain about, I've never understood this. Like you can criticize any network for anything you want, but complaining about pre and post game shows that are too long, it's called a remote. Use it. I never watch pregame shows. I never watch post game shows ever. Not interested. Last night I wanted to see Tebow, and I didn't know how he'd do, but I thought he was pretty good. But people are like, oh, now you're analyzing analysts? So what? There's media critics at every company in America taking shots at ESPN. So what? I work in the business. I know it. I know who's good. I know who's not. I have an opinion.
How dare they?
People get so worked up. Oh, these pregame shows. Turn the channel. Don't watch it. The play of the game to me last night, the game was in jeopardy of getting very boring when Auburn led 21-3. You could sense that as a viewer. I'm thinking to myself, because last year's game was so awful, Notre Dame was so out of its league, 35-0 at one point Alabama. This game, it worried me at 21-3 when Jameis Winston was struggling. And you're sitting there watching, it's 21-3 Auburn, and I'm thinking, they're punting now to Auburn. If Auburn scores again, it's turn your TV off. It's 28-3 at half. Auburn goes for the fake, Florida State goes for the fake punt, succeeds, and it changed everything. You could just feel it. Sometimes you don't even have to be in a stadium. You don't have to be in the same region. You can watch a game, and you can tell from the crowd and the players and the sidelines and the announcers, it sort of changes momentum. I thought the fake punt was the game. It was 21-3, and Jimbo Fisher admitted after the game, they don't make that, they're probably not national champs.
We lost momentum of the game. It was 21-3. I knew with 5 minutes to go, if they got it back and scored, the game could be over right there before half. And I knew we had the ball coming out the second half, and we're here to win this thing. And I thought that's what we had to do to gain the momentum of the game back, and it worked, and we got it, went down, got the drive, and then got back in the ball game. And hopefully that's what changed the momentum of the game and got our confidence back.
Basketball and football are very much games of momentum. That's why you see in the NBA and college basketball the great coaches, timeouts when the other team goes in a run, just quiet things down for 90 seconds, 2 minutes. Nick Saban talks about fake punts. Even when they fail, sometimes they have value. This is a very interesting thought about the fake punt by Florida State and the value of doing things risky like that.
Would you look for an opportunity to make a call like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we did in the LSU game this year. Was tied 17-17, 4th and 3 or something.
And from that point, you dominated.
And we dominated the game.
Just saying,
and, you know, sometimes, even when it doesn't work, the players think you're trying to win, and it really kind of sends a message to them, and it changes their mentality. So, you know, that happened in the SEC championship to me. We went for it on 4th and 1 on our own 29-yard line. I got stopped, and I said, this is the dumbest call I've ever made. And then we outscored Tennessee like 24-3 the rest of the game.
Interesting.
And the players come up to you after the game and say, that's what won the game. When you try to go for it, I thought I lost.
Real value sometimes in taking risks and the message it sends to your teammates and your best program in the country. So for me, it's like welcome back to the club. They were out of it for about 10 years. As a kid growing up, the best programs in the country were the Miami Hurricanes and the Florida State Seminoles. Those were the two best teams. They had the best players.
And Nebraska.
Texas wasn't that great. USC was not really that great.
And
Ohio
Colorado
State.
had a good run there.
When I'm in my 20s in Vegas, Florida State, Bobby Bowden, they were top 5 every year. They didn't care about the SEC.
You're talking about the late 80s. I was a teenager.
He didn't own Spurrier, but Bowden had a winning record against the SEC and Spurrier. They had the best players. They had Deion Sanders. And Miami had Warren Sapp, Cortez Kennedy. Miami had better players than the SEC. And then the SEC has gone on this decade run where they've clearly been the best program. But don't forget, it was 10, 12 years ago, it was Florida State and Miami. I mean, the Miami Hurricanes, they didn't care about the SEC. I mean, they had Dayton, Broward County, and Jimmy Johnson 15 years ago. They were getting better classes. So this SEC dominance this is the last 10 years. I think they've had it. They've had more money. They've had better coaching. They've had better players. I think they'll continue to be awesome. But I do think the spread offense is kind of throwing a wrench into dominance. Now, it should be noted that the SEC will now go out and get all these spread quarterbacks. So that doesn't mean the SEC still produces, the South still produces the most good college football players, the most good high school football players. That part of the region, that part of the country still produces the most. But Danny Cannell has branded himself, positioned himself as the anti-SEC guy. And I imagine when he joins me next, he's going to tell us that the SEC is just eroding into a pile of wrenches and that it's no good. So Danny Cannell probably takes some shots. Danny, you've done a good job of branding, because I think of you last night in that game and all the hate you're getting. You've poked the SEC in the ribs since you got to ESPN. Is last night a referendum that the erosion of the SEC, Danny, has officially begun?
Colin, I think it does. I mean, I've been saying this, and to be fair, I've been saying it for a couple years now. I mean, I really feel like when I hear people just make the blanket statement, the SEC is head and shoulders above the rest, I say, hold on a second. Let's evaluate this. Let's look a little deeper. I know they had the 7, national championships in a row, but I think that gap is not as great as everybody thinks. I think that their gap has been fully closed now. And I'm not saying the ACC is better than the SEC, but I think the SEC is beatable, and I think Florida State proved that last night, as well as Oklahoma against Alabama. I think that's probably the bigger indictment, not so much the Florida State versus Auburn game, but the fact in the BCS that the SEC went 0-2, that's pretty awakening if you're an SEC fan. I think it's got to cause a little concern.
Danny played at Florida State, now with ESPN. Danny, I would argue this. The SEC has largely dominated college football the last decade, not because of receivers and running backs and safeties and quarterbacks. Saban said this last night. It's because they've been so dominant with elite defensive down linemen. But with the spread offense and the no huddle, to me, Danny, it somewhat limits the dominance of a defensive line, because from a cardio standpoint, it does sort of mitigate dominating 335-pound guys. That's why I think your argument has some merit, that where they're really great at, they won't be as dominant with the spread. You know what I'm saying?
Definitely. I know exactly what you're saying, Colin. And it's the game of football. The game evolves. I mean, remember the 85 Bears? There was a Bear defense that, how's anybody going to be able to move it on the Bear defense? Teams figure it out. Then all of a sudden, it goes to another one. The Wildcat was all the rage in the NFL for a while, and then all of a sudden that's disappeared because teams adjust to it. The adjustment for the SEC defenses with those big defensive linemen has been to spread them out, to get the ball on the perimeter, to put the ball on the outside, and let your skill guys get out in space. I mean, if you try to run it up on Alabama's offensive line and run right at them, you know, with two backs and a tight end and a cloud of dust, it's going to be futile. You won't be able to do that. But if you get the ball on the perimeter, if you use a lot of misdirection, the things that Gus Malzahn has done at Auburn, if you've got a quarterback like Johnny Manziel who runs around, makes plays outside of the pocket, and stresses your secondary, that's been the recipe for success against the SEC defense.
The politics of